So for my social policy paper, I wrote and researched the Defense of Marriage Act of 1996. And as with most policies in the United States, the Defense of Marriage Act of 1996, or for short, DOMA, was written as a demand in conversation on same-sex marriage and gay rights was on the rise. Tensions were really high at this time as the homosexual community was lobbying for equal rights and treatment under federal and private law. And this policy was written by Representative Bob Barr in the purpose of addressing this issue and the rising conversation, specifically related to, at the time, the Hawaii Judicial Court was making a lean toward possibly legalizing same-sex marriage, and with the clause in the Constitution that states full faith and full credit, meaning that each state would have to recognize and honor the legal status of marriage approved by Hawaii or any other state that legalized marriage within their state. In addition to this, the motivation was to provide a standard of definition of a marriage from state to state in order to provide grounds on what qualified a married couple to receive federal benefits. Some question this stated motivation, believing that the true motivation of the government in writing DOMA was to restrict a movement that they feared and felt threatened by. So specifically going into what was actually written within the policy, it's a 3-section policy, really short. Section 1 is just the title, Defense of Marriage Act of 1996. And then Section 2 goes into addressing that full faith, full credit clause in the Constitution. So with DOMA, it is exempting states from that full faith, full credit clause under the specific category of same-sex marriage, meaning that no state would be required to acknowledge a legalized gay married couple from one state in their own state, allowing them to maintain making decisions on this highly controversial topic, allowing them to remain in power over their state, not giving too much power to the federal government. Many people come against this section because it does go against that constitutional clause of the full faith, full credit. And on the other side of that, people are really constantly worried about how much power the federal government has over the nation versus allowing and keeping a lot of the power with the people and with the states, individual states. And so that was kind of where Bob Barr came in trying to attempt that issue of wanting to keep the states in power over issues, something especially as controversial as this was at the time. And Section 3, which is the final section of the policy, was seeking to provide a federal definition, nationwide definition of marriage. And that definition was as one man, one woman, marriages between one man and one woman would qualify for federal benefits. And while that sounds like it could be something in support of the church or that it was a faith statement, it wasn't really any sourcing in any really faith background. Is more focused on providing a federal definition of marriage, meaning that even if a state recognized a gay couple as legally married, they would still not qualify for federal benefit from the government. This was, as you can probably imagine, the most highly controversial piece of this act, because it takes away the rights of the individual couple, and those benefits go far beyond just a right. It goes beyond goes into the individual families of those couples. A gay couple has children, they have bigger things beyond that, and so that those federal benefits aid them in raising those kids. They qualify for different things in financial status, and so specifically with this clause is where people had the most negative reaction to. And in the last 30 years of this policy being around, it's lost a lot of its support, including its original writer, Bob Barr, who's the representative who wrote this policy. And actually in 2013, the Supreme Court, in reference to this policy, overturned this Section 3, meaning that in 2013, couples who were legally married by their state were now able to receive federal benefits. And those federal benefits go beyond just federal aid, like money aid. It goes into issues if one half of your couple was a immigrant from another country, not being granted legal status in the United States, and issues like that. And so there are a lot of issues, if you read into that personal accounts of people's struggles in their marriage because of different issues like that. So it goes far beyond just financial aid. It goes into all sorts of other rights that are given to married couples. And finally, as we all know, in 2015, this whole policy kind of was made obsolete in the fact that the Supreme Court legalized marriage nationwide. With that, Section 2 of this policy, like I said before, is obsolete, meaning that even though it says that no state is required to acknowledge the legalization of the marriage from another state, it is not a thing anymore, that any state in the United States would not recognize a marriage because it's legal nationwide. Some people have a problem with that because it goes against the original intent of the Supreme Court ruling, goes against the original attempt of preserving that power in each state. There were still 13 states in the United States in 2015 where they were still against legalizing marriage, and so it kind of overturned their view on this issue. So with that said, that's a briefing of DOMA, no longer really in effect, but not officially taken off the table, just with the recent laws passed in the past couple years. The policies laid out in this act are no longer applicable to the current status of the United States. It is still controversial. There are people arguing on both sides in the arguments that I just mentioned on what's right, and this topic goes far beyond just this policy. The topic of LGBT rights goes further into all different areas and continues to be discussed today. So it's an important topic for us to be, especially as Christians and people in the church, and people going out into the workplace as in the helping profession, for us to be briefed on and what's going on in the world, especially in this highly talked about topic. So thanks for listening.